All right, everybody, welcome to the Nairobi Health Show. I am Coach Dave Sherwin, and I've got Dr. Doug Pucci on with me today. Dr. Doug, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Dave. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
And the last name is Pucci, and he explained to me it's just like Gucci, but with a P.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So,
it doesn't sound Irish, right?
Not Irish. As a matter of fact, let me read your bio real quick so everyone can get a feel for who you are, and we'll have you expand on that, of course. But let me just read this so people watching and listening can get a feel for just who is with us today on the show. Dr. Pucci has been a board-certified practicing natural healthcare provider who treats each patient as a unique individual and works tirelessly to get to the root cause of their health issues rather than just treating symptoms. He's been practicing over 30 years in the New York City area. As Bergen County's face of functional medicine, he was honored to receive both the Best of 2020 awards for functional medicine in Oradell, New Jersey, and Trademark Publications Top Doctors of America for his pioneering work. So great stuff, Dr. Pucci. Congratulations on the awards, and we're excited to hear from you and why people are singing your praises right now.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it didn't come easy. A lot of work at it. Yeah.
30 years practice. That's a good long time.
It's hard to believe how fast the years go by, to be honest with you. I almost feel like I have like two careers in a way, you know? Yeah, I started at my career as a chiropractor. That's how I began. And it was great. I was working as a chiropractor does, and I was treating a lot of people. And but the short of it was, at some point, I was really getting a bit frustrated because I wasn't able to help everyone that I thought I would be able to help. There were people that were coming in that did really well in the chiropractic care, but there were other people that just were not really responding, and some people didn't respond at all. And I never really understood why it was that I would have them come back, 2-3 times a week and adjust them. And the adjustment was fine, but they couldn't hold the adjustments, and I still wasn't making any inroads. And so I went back to school, right? When I began to go back to school to get involved in neurology, in brain work, and I started to go into what's called functional neurology and get certification there. And in that field, it was like the light bulbs just went off. It was like, whoa, how come they weren't teaching this back in chiropractic school? And so I started to look at everyone and started treating everyone from a brain perspective, really realizing that most of the problems structurally in the spine, the chronic low back problems, the sciatica, the radiculopathies, they were really an upstream problem. They were really neurologically based. And unless you kind of went there and evaluated and started to try to, try to rebalance the right hemisphere and the left hemispheres and give activation to the cerebellum, is you couldn't get them to hold the downstream adjustment or whatever the therapy was, whether it was physical therapy, acupuncture, even orthopedic work, massage work, nothing was working. But as I got into that world of neurology, I quickly learned that, the brain is an incredibly energy demanding organ. And so many people that I was seeing had metabolic problems. They had blood sugar problems. They had insulin resistance. They had hypoglycemia. They had hormone imbalances and thyroid problems. And they had gut issues and dysbiosis. And all of these things collectively was impacting negatively their brain. And their brains didn't have enough energy because of these underlying metabolic problems. And so then you could not correct the brain issues without correcting the hormone issues and the gut issues and so forth. So again, I had to go back to school and I had to start learning all of these things, and hundreds of hours later. And that's how it's really been the field of functional medicine and functional neurology. And it's evolving even still today, basically.
So this is a fascinating arena. I one of my favorite podcasts is the Sam Harris podcast, Waking Up.
Okay.
And he's a neurologist. He's a man. What is his degree in again? He got a degree in Stanford, a PhD in as a neuroscientist. And recently, he had a podcast called The Divided Mind with Ian McGilchrist. Okay. Do you know that?
I know the
name at all? To me, this is just fun stuff. Like, our brain. It's interesting because it's in the health world, right? Not only does everything flow from our brain and our consciousness, but we talk so much about our body, and yet at the simplest level, when we wake up in the morning and our mind says, "I don't feel like working out," the body's fine. the body can work out or not work out. It's going to follow whatever the brain says, right? So wake up in the morning, and everything that happens for the rest of the day is a result of what flows from our consciousness and our brain, right? That's kind of fascinating.
It is. Your brain is really, it is your greatest asset. And we should really know that and nurture that as much as we can. But in light of what you're saying, like you want to get up in the morning, what differentiates some people that they can get up in the morning, they feel great, they're ready to conquer the world, do their exercises, do things right, eat the right foods, and get out the door and do what they got to do. And other people are just, they're struggling. They force themselves to get up. They force themselves, to get through the day and take care of their kids, but they're exhausted all the time, right? And they have a tired brain, right? One of the complaints I hear constantly is, they call it brain fog, right? And so many people have it. That includes young people. This is not like an old person's condition, brain fog. This affects very young people. And brain fog really is, it's a term we say that it represents that the brain is just sort of foggy. You can't really keep, clear focus. You don't feel sharp, and all those things that we're familiar with, right? But really, it's a sign of what we call endurance problems in the brain. It's energy deprivation in the brain, right? And, so a lot of things are factors, whether it be hormones or, and most importantly is the gut. So the gut health, right? And the bacteria in the gut that are creating and digesting nutrients and breaking down hormones and breaking down neurochemicals and all these different things is a direct pipeline back to your brain. So there is that gut-brain access. So it's the kind of the story, we call it the inflammation in your gut, inflammation in your brain. Right? So,
interesting.
Yeah. So, people that have lack of motivation and brain fog and stuff, right? You got to kind of think about the gut. Take an evaluation. What's their gut look like? What's the microbes look like? Right. And so people who are living on processed foods, right? High hydrogenated oils and different things that are inflammatory, they don't eat a variety of vegetables, is they're basically killing off all of the really good, healthy bacteria, what they call the microbiome of the gut. And it's shifting the gut microbiome into an imbalanced state of an overgrowth of bad bacteria and yeast and fungi and protozoas and stuff. And basically that what happens in that environment is that when you have, your gut environment is an ecosystem. Let me just say, this is what I hear this from people all the time, which is when I ask people, they often think that the gut environment is this clean, sterile environment. They think that when we get an infection that causes us to feel bad, the doctor pushing on an antibiotic, the antibiotic is going to kill that bad guy. And 10 days later, you feel better and the bad guy is killed and you're back to this clean, sterile environment and off you go again. Back to living your life in that crazy, abusive, poor dietary way. Well, that is the farthest thing from reality. The reality is your gut environment, this microbiome is much more like a science fiction movie. It houses trillions of organisms. Again, bacteria, tens of thousands of viruses, fungi and yeast and protozoas. They all habitate there. It's a living ecosystem. And this gut environment, literally, it regulates the production of vitamins and nutrients. When you eat foods and you want to break these things down to vital nutrients, it's the bacteria in your gut that are doing that. You got to have the bacteria to do that, right? It breaks down and regulates hormone productions. It regulates the constitution of chemicals that affect our moods like serotonin and dopamine. And literally these bacteria are turning on and turning off our genes. So the bacteria in our gut have more control over whether we express cancer than not. So that's a really important window. So again, to your point, is this overlooked environment of gut microbiome is critical to our brain health and to our moods and to our brain's energy.
So 2 points. There's a question from Facebook, but before we jump into that one, I want to back up just a little bit. So I've been in the health industry professionally since 2009, and over the years have done multiple surveys of our customers. And for the longest time, many of the results were the same. Their top concerns were weight loss. They were things like some disease, of course, if people have chronic diseases, those would be mentioned, of course. Things like inability to establish a good fitness regimen. All of the known suspects came up over and over. But last fall, we did another survey and brain fog was in the top 5. we did another survey about a month ago with hundreds of respondents, and brain fog was number 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been an interesting thing. Now, along those lines, as you've mentioned, and then we got this comment from Facebook, why do people have low energy? What are a couple reasons? And those two things to me seem related.
Mm-hmm.
Brain fog, low energy. I don't know. I'll turn that over to you. That's my comment and a question from Facebook. I'll let you address those however you like.
Yeah, but no, it is. I mean, so I just said earlier that brain fog really is an energy problem in the brain. Your brain needs energy to function. There's your cells in your brain are called neurons, right? And there's billions of them, and they're communicating to each other. But for a neuron to produce a chemical called a neurotransmitter, like a serotonin and dopamine, and communicate to the next neuron, that neuron needs energy in order to do that. So your brain is the greatest consumer of energy, more than any other organ in the body. Okay, its first fuel source is going to be glucose. So when people have blood sugar dysregulation, too high, too low, it's going to immediately impact brain physiology and affect their moods and so forth. But there's a lot of factors that affect fatigue. There's so many factors, right? So I mean, the knee-jerk reaction is thyroid, and that's a good place to start, right? Your thyroid hormones regulates metabolism. It's part of the endocrine system. Every gland in your body is part of the endocrine system that makes hormones that circulate through your body. But the specific role of the thyroid hormones, T4, T3, is to regulate metabolism, which means to produce energy at a cellular level. But it really goes way beyond thyroid, because so often we'll see people have really normal, healthy thyroid levels of hormones and their physiology is fine, but yet they still have brain fog. They still feel exhausted through the day. And what is it? So now you go really deeper into the chronic fatigue kind of things, right? And really you start getting deeper now into what is called the mitochondria, which are inside of every cell of you, when there's like 30, some say 50 trillion cells. But every cell has a power plant, like an energy power plant, which is called a mitochondria. Now, some cells have 10, 20, 30 of those, and other cells, such as your heart muscle and these brain cells called neurons, and your muscles have literally thousands of mitochondria packed in there, because those organs need to make so much energy. They're just operating 24/7. And so what we really see is that if we can't get the nutrients inside your cells and you can't get the toxins out of your cell, then what happens is the toxins are backing up and they start damaging the mitochondria. One of the things about aging, and this is just part of aging, unfortunately, but this is where we want to kind of maybe reverse the age a little bit, right? But it's aging is really the loss of mitochondria. That's what it is. So every decade of life, we lose a percentage of mitochondria. So your cells don't have that. It's like you have a 6-cylinder car. Now it's running on 5 cylinders, and then it's running on 4 cylinders. Right? And you're still trying to get the same effort out of the car, but now you're running on less cylinders. It's just not there. Right. So the question really is like, okay, what's affecting the mitochondria? What's damaging the mitochondria prematurely? So take age away from it. So you've heard, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but you've heard things like there's your chronological age and your biological age. There's a lot of research now and a lot of ways of studying through different types of lab analysis and saying, what is your biological age? So your chronological age is your birthday. On such and such a date, you turn 50, and such a date, you turn 60, and so on, when you celebrate your birthday. But your biological age is really the aging of your cells. In some ways, they also measure as your cardiac output. Right? So the older you get, the less cardiac output you have. Right? That's why you can't run as far and do as much, your cardiac output. Right. But it's energy at a cellular level. So a person can be 60, but their biological age might be 50. And that's pretty awesome, right? They're living a lifestyle that's encouraging their mitochondria to grow, because your mitochondria can grow, right? And you protect the mitochondria. Then you see people that are literally like 30 years old, and they do a biological testing, and they're more like 50 or 65. They're like aging way ahead of themselves. They do this routinely in cardiovascular health. They look at what they call the aging of the cardiovascular system. And a person can be 50 years of age, but their vessels are 75 years old. Yikes. Not good,
okay,
right?
Doc, so give me the skinny. I'm 54. What's the best possible biological age I could do? I want to achieve the absolute best biological age I can. What's the upside here?
The limit is whatever you want it to be, right? I mean, that's
I
with
want it to
reason,
be 20. How about
yeah,
that?
well, you could be 20 in your mind, that's for sure, right? I'm still 35 in my head, that's for sure.
Yeah. Love it.
My wife tells me differently, but I'm 35 in my own headspace. I look in the mirror and I'm not sure who's looking back anymore. I don't recognize myself. I'm like, oh my goodness, right?
My dad says in the body of every old man is a young man saying, "What the hell happened?"
Yeah. But I'm just a little bit older than you, and but I kind of walk the talk too. I'm into this world. I live in this world. I mean, I do the best. I eat a really healthy, have a healthy lifestyle. My diet, I prioritize things.
Yeah.
It's important enough to me, right? I prioritize things. It's really true. The older you get, the more, your life expectancy kind of stares you in the mirror a little bit, right? Mortality a little bit. I'm old enough now, maybe you are, that I've had some friends of mine who have passed away, right? And it's like a shocker. You're like, what?
I have too, and of preventable situations.
Preventable, yes. Yeah. I mean, all degenerative diseases are preventable and to some degree reversible. That includes cardiovascular health. Good.
Okay, I can tell we're going to move off this topic probably pretty soon. And before we do, there's another question I've been holding on, but I think this is a good time. So this will keep the ideas percolating here. Is there a link between low energy and heart disease? Is there some kind? Okay, interesting.
Absolutely. It's one of those things. As I was mentioning to you before we got started, is that I'm actually doing a presentation tomorrow on cardiovascular disease to a group of people. The majority of people that I see in my office do not come to me specifically for cardiovascular disease. They may say to me one of their complaints or their concerns is blood pressure, but they're not really seeking me for cardiovascular disease. I see people with, with hormone problems and autoimmune problems and gastric problems and depression and anxiety and the whole gamut, but they don't put cardiovascular disease up there, right? But the reality is all of the same triggers that drives neurological things from anxiety and depression and mood and focus problems and fatigue problems and gastric problems, the same mechanisms is driving cardiovascular. So these people underlying, they don't know it, they have cardiovascular issues. They have it. So the answer to the question is that what does the cardiovascular system do? What is the vascular system doing? Right, it's a delivery system, right? You're bringing nutrients through your vascular system, inclusive of oxygen, to get to your tissues, right? If I just went out for a run, which I just did, right? If my vascular system can't get the oxygen to my muscles are going to start cramping up and they're going to get tired and they're going to get fatigued. So that's when you have that's an endurance problem. If you're going to a gym and you're exercising and you don't have the same energy, you don't have the same endurance. You're not getting enough oxygen someplace, but that goes for the brain, right? So back to brain fog is you need to get oxygen to the brain, and your vascular system is bringing it to the brain. So if I can't get enough oxygen to my brain cells are not going to function properly because you don't have that fuel source, right? And that's and you start getting brain fog. You start getting endurance problems, right? So people say, for example, they may not call it brain fog, but they might say, gosh, when I read, I read for a paragraph and I start falling asleep. Or I read and I just really can't remember what I'm reading the way I used to.
Right.
Can't concentrate. Those are all clinical signs of endurance problems for the brain, and you cannot not rule out vascular issues there as one contributory cause. Right. So yes, cardiovascular disease and brain health. Do you think about dementia? There's different forms of dementia. Alzheimer's being the most noticeable one. Right. But the most common form of dementia is what? Is vascular dementia. So damage to the vascular system, which is cardiovascular, can't deliver oxygen to the brain. Right? Brain cells die, and we call it dementia.
Yeah. So basically, most of us, myself included, when we think of cardiovascular health, I always think about a strong heart. I always think about my heart being able to pump. I'm concerned about my resting heart rate. I try to keep it low through exercise. I love to keep it under 60, 55 beats a minute. And I feel like I'm really doing well if that's the case, and my blood pressure and those types of things. But it's interesting, as you point out, that the brain is kind of more important than the heart. I mean, we want both to function, of course, But just like we do our endurance exercises to keep our heart going, basically what I hear you saying is we got to think the same way for our own brain, which totally makes sense.
Yeah. Your brain, again, is the controlling mechanism. Your heart is a muscle, it's a pump, right?
Right.
You think about it, when you have coronary disease, what is it? The arteries that actually feed the heart muscle are blocked. They can't bring oxygen to the heart, so the heart muscle fails, like any muscle will fail. If you're trying to do biceps curls and you're restricting the blood flow, the muscle is going to fatigue and fail. But it's your brain that is sending signals to the heart and regulating that heart output. Right. So oftentimes.
Okay. So no, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to. What I was saying is that so if there is functional imbalances with the brain, we can then safely assume that we can assess that there's probably functional imbalances, or maybe with cardiac output. If you think about checking your pulse, suppose you're checking your heart rate, you're checking your pulse, and you're saying, like, this is one of the things I do in my office when we're doing a neurological workup with someone. You might put, for example, you know what a pulse ox is? A pulse ox, they do that. So a pulse ox is just measuring your oxygen levels in your fingertips or your toes. They can also.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
They do that with COVID patients, right? They want to see what their oxygen level is with COVID, right?
Yeah.
They're saying their oxygen level is going down. They're in a hypoxic state. Really bad.
Yeah, you want it
right?
96 to 98 or something like that, right?
Yeah, and it also tells you your pulse rate, your heart rate.
Yeah.
So we might put that on a person, and you're moving your fingers trying to activate. Let's say, so everything you put it on, everything looks pretty good to begin with. Your tissue perfusion is 98, meaning tissue perfusion means how well are you getting oxygen to your tips of your fingers? And that's carried by those small blood vessels, right? So you want to see that if it's 98, that means, oh, okay, good, we're getting oxygen to the tissues. Good sign there. The pulse, which is your heart rate, right? Yeah. Maybe you want to be 62, you want to be 60, you want to be 58. That's great. If you went out for a run and you started sprinting, you checked your heart rate, you would expect it to go up, would you not?
Sure. Yeah.
That would be appropriate. It better go up because your heart's got to work faster to pump more blood through your body. If it wasn't going up, that would be disappropriate. Yeah. Well, what happens if you're sitting at a resting position, we're checking your pulse and it's erratic? Or maybe more clear. Let's say I'm looking at your pulses, and on your right finger, your pulse is 62, and on your left hand, your pulse is 85.
Can that happen?
Oh, it happens all the time.
I did not know that.
That happens all the time.
I'll be darned.
So that's you're looking at something and you're saying, so you don't regulate you don't go out for a run and say and crank up your heart rate. You're not automatically or consciously regulating your heart rate. That's happening on an autonomic level, automatic level. That is your autonomous nervous system, right? And so your pulses are controlled automatically by your brain. And so if you're seeing on one side of your body, your pulse is at a certain rate, and on the other side of your body, the pulse is at a different rate. That could be at rest, or it could be after you did a run or
I just thought that was the beats of the heart.
No, but why would it
equal all the way through?
But it should be. So yeah, right, Dave. But so why would you see one as an example? Why would one side of your body be 60, the other side of your body, the pulse is 15 points higher?
I want to know.
That is called dysautonomia, a dysregulated autonomic nervous system. Right? That is your brain that is not regulating properly. And therefore, that is setting signals down, and your body now is dysregulating. So it could be your heart rhythm could be dysregulating, right? Your hormones could be dysregulating, timings of things. Sleep can be dysautonomia. Your brain is controlling and regulating sleep, right? So you talk about sleep, but it's just still brain things. So you see a lot of this dysautonomia. Now, I don't want to go too far, but dysautonomia or changes to brain function can happen for numerous reasons. Small example would be a head trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It could be from playing sports, concussion. I've had 4 concussions, at least I know of playing sports. Yeah. It could be from post-traumatic stress. It could be from infections that get into the brain, which is extremely common. Infections get into the brain. Very, very, very common. You see this with young kids. A kid can get something like, very commonly you see a strep infection. Strep infections are pretty common, right? Especially in kids. But if they have a strep infection, the immune system is reacting against the strep infection, and the kid is outside and it gets hit in the head with a soccer ball, and the blood-brain barrier opens, the strep infection can cross into the blood past the blood and get into the brain. And now your immune system, which is reacting against the strep, can react against the brain. So now your immune system is reacting to the brain and causing dysautonomia. So if you came in and I'm doing your pulses and I say, hey, Dave, look, I mean, your right hand, your pulse is 60 and your left hand, it's 85 at rest. What's happening here? You're going to say, I don't know. You're saying, I do experience, arrhythmias and stuff. And I got to go,
I had two hearts.
This is not right, but we got to figure out why.
Right.
We got to figure out why, and I can do things to kind of work with your brain to help kind of try to balance your brain, but I still got to find what the mechanism is that's driving that. So if it happens to be a small example, strep, then I got to come and approach it from an immune perspective.
Okay, so you've given us tons of great and interesting science and ideas, and I'm going to put you on pause for a minute, and we're going to give people some practical ideas. So you'd mentioned how your career has been pretty much two-part, and not only could I kind of follow with you how that would be so different going from being a chiropractor to the focus you have now, but in addition, the last 30 years of health science has been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 30 years is back to 1990. I mean, a few years before that, I was playing high school basketball and they were telling us not to drink water, right?
Like, right. I remember that. Yeah.
We have come a long, long way now. As you've gone through all this and given some of the challenges you're seeing people face, I'd like you to just talk about where the rubber hits the road. What are some of the top things people are doing? Some of the top negatives, lifestyle or nutritional problems that are causing the biggest problems that you're seeing?
Yeah. So again, as we just kind of said a few minutes ago, is that when we think about chronic degenerative type diseases, whether they're neurological, brain-based, whether it's cardiovascular disease, whether it's hormone imbalances, I mean, these things really are reversible. Right? The earlier you get to it, the better. And what I always explain to everyone is, in my world, we do a lot of functional testing, and we can get into like a lot of details, and nutrition as an example, certainly. But I always you have to macro manage before you micromanage. And what I mean by macro manage is lifestyle. It's just lifestyle. The very first thing we have to assess with somebody is their lifestyle, right? Stress levels, what their diet's like, sleep habits, exercise. What are these fundamental things that are people doing or not doing in their lives, right? You can't micromanage your way out of an unhealthy lifestyle type of thing, right?
Right.
So, yeah. Then from there, you start getting into the little nits and gritties of targeted nutrition and doing different things, right? But if a person's got, dysbiosis, meaning an overgrowth of bacteria or yeast in their gut, and I want to come in with certain nutraceuticals and things to eradicate the yeast infection and try to balance things, there's really no amount of products or probiotics you're going to throw at somebody that's going to make an impact if they're not working on stress levels and sleep habits and their overall diet and exercise. Just not going to do it. You got to collaborate and kind of do the whole thing, right? Yeah. It's just, the struggle always is, I guess, is motivating people, getting people involved and motivating people to do things. Right.
What are the top struggles they're having? What's the hardest thing you're having to get people to do? Is it nutrition? Is it fitness? Is it taking the nutraceuticals wouldn't be that hard because you just buy them and take them. But I don't know. I mean, what would you say people's biggest challenges are that you're seeing?
Well, I think, being in this a long time, I said 30 years, and transitioning through all different versions of in the healthcare business for a really long time. And where people are at today, more than ever, people are suffering with autoimmune diseases and these chronic health issues. That's what's really plaguing their lives, Yeah. But people go to the internet, and there's certainly a tremendous amount of information out there. We call it Dr. Google, of course, and you can get access to lots of information. And there's a lot of good information out there. I'm not saying it, but there's also a lot of not so good information out there. And there's a lot of conflicting information, and people can get really overwhelmed with all that information. And also, you have to realize is that people come in, they see me, they always walk in bringing somebody's book, and they read this person's book and this person's book about autoimmune this and autoimmune that, and they're following this person's protocol. I'm like, that's great. It's a good start. But the reality is, you're following what worked for one individual person, and everybody's uniquely different. And that's where precision medicine comes in, or personalized medicine comes in. But I think, one of the biggest obstacles that I see is still people's headspace. Like people
Hmm.
are still looking for, and I can't blame them, but they're looking for a simple solution to complex problems.
Right.
They want me, they want me to give them one diet to follow or one or two supplements to take that's going to somehow rock their world and just change everything. And
Right.
that's just not the way it is, right? You have multiple systems.
Silver bullet.
You have all these different systems, a cardiovascular system and a digestive system and a endocrine system, a neurological system, an immune system that are all interrelated and cross-talking. And these things all get caught back in feedback loops. And you have to go a little bit deeper and dig in. So the people that are willing to invest in themselves a little bit with the right kind of guidance, right, and run some tests to figure out some better answers, and then are willing to engage. When I work with people, what I really not require, but what I explain to people is that I work with people as a partnership. I'm not like the doctor. People who used to go into a doctor, right, and saying, "Doctor, here's my complaints and fix me." It's sort of like they kind of point the finger, "Fix me," and the doctor wants to give them the drug to fix them. Give me the aspirin, make my headache go away, right? And that's still where kind of people are conditioned a little bit. And part of that conditioning, unfortunately, comes out of the insurance industry, right? Because that's what people get caught up in. They get caught up in, okay, I go to my doctor, and the insurance is going to pay for that. My doctor's going to fix me a problem. He's going to write me a prescription, and my ailments are going to go away. Now, people are realizing today more and more that the medications aren't the answer. More and more people today don't want to be taking medications. They hear the side effects. They know the side effects. They want a holistic lifestyle. They want direction. They want answers. They want guidance on food and nutrition. That's terrific. But they're still expecting the insurance to pay for it. Right. The insurance is not, that's not an insurance ain't paying for that. The insurance is a sick care model. It's a sick care. It's based in sickness. It's treating for, it's paying for sick care treatment. It's not paying for health. If you want health, you got to invest in yourself. Right?
Do you do coaching?
What's that?
Do you do like one-on-one coaching or group coaching, or what do you do? I mean, I know you have your practice there locally, but of course, this is a podcast. People listen from all over the place.
Yeah. Well, you know what's happened, which has been it's kind of a crazy way to say it. When I say a blessing, there's always a silver lining in a cloudy sky. But with the fact with COVID is forced many doctors, myself specifically, is my practice has changed dynamically since a year ago. I mean, a year ago we had a brick and mortar practice. It was busy and it was packed and it was wearing me down. But COVID shut down. I was shut down for 12 weeks in the East Coast. And I had to pivot. Yeah. I had to pivot, and I had to reach people differently, and I had to get caught up with. So now my practice is 90% virtual. So I see people. I see people from around the country right now. I see them virtually. Like I'm talking to you, and it took a while to get used to getting all the software, HIPAA compliant software set up, and all kinds of technology, all these things. But and we're still, navigating that, but it's been really great because now we're able to reach people I couldn't reach before. It makes it so much more convenient and cost effective for people. They don't have to travel to the office, kill time, sit in the office, go home, all those things. You can just do it in the comfort of your house. I can run test labs are now sending, the labs will send a functional lab test direct to you, right? You get it. You do the lab test. You mail it back in. I get the results. I put it up on the computer screen. I share it with you. You see your lab results right on the computer screen as we're sharing it, and I'm going over it with you. I spend a lot of pre-education videos now because what I find is that if I can pre-educate people, and that's really what has to happen in functional medicine, holistic medicine, is that people really want what we want, but they need to be more educated into what it really is and how it can so transform their lives. But they need.
Okay, let me jump in because a question was asked a long time ago, and I've just kind of gotten away from it. But you just mentioned testing, and there was a question a while back, again from Facebook. A lot of people don't know how to check for blood pressure correctly. Can you talk about that? So blood pressure, is that one of the things you want to know? Is that one of the core things you need as you diagnose, or
I want to know everything. So when I evaluate a patient, usually typically what happens is, again, is that things start before I even meet with the person, whether it's in person or through virtually, right? Is they will send me all of their history of tests and doctors, and I want to know what worked, what didn't work, and timelines and different things. And then we also send them a lot of paperwork, not a lot, but paperwork. But the paperwork that we send are really more what we call metabolic questions. These are questions that help me to get kind of a clear understanding of where the priorities are. Do I need to focus on their blood sugar? Do I need to focus on liver detoxification? What do I need to focus on? I kind of prioritize things a little bit. And then we lay a game plan out as to like what tests that we might want to run to help us dig a little bit deeper and get better answers. Now, we always start off with a comprehensive blood workup, right? Comprehensive blood works are very, very useful tools, but it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. But when we kind of look at their past history, when we kind of look at what's their metabolic intake paperwork are telling me, when I look at their signs and their symptoms, when I look at what they're doing nutritionally, when I look at what their blood test is telling me, I have a pretty good framework of where the priorities are and what we got to do. From there, I can discuss with you as an example what test functional tests might be advantageous for us. Now, there's no shortage of functional tests. There's lots of them, right? So we don't want to run everything because that gets to be too cost prohibitive. So we want to be conscious of what people can afford to pay. And so we say, look, I think this test and this test are going to be quite valuable. Let's start with these tests. Let's see what the results are going to be, and let's tie that in. Right now, I'm at this a long time too. So let me explain to you one other thing is that I have people that come to see me. They've been to other functional doctors, other integrative doctors, and they walk in, they drop a big stack of tests on my desk from years of testing with other doctors and tests that I would run. And I'm always like, well, why are you seeing me at this point? If you're already seeing other doctors that are doing similar work, why are you not getting help there? Right. And after all these years of looking at this, because in functional medicine, as a functional practitioner, honestly, it's just experience. You just can't learn something functionally for a year. I mean, you got to start someplace. Obviously, everybody's got someplace, but you can't. There's no substitute for the years of clinical practice and working with live people. But what it is that you look at these tests, and you have to be able to be skilled enough to be able to connect the dots to the tests, and you got to still. A lot of doctors in functional medicine saying, well, the symptoms are important. Let's look at the functional tests. And like, well, no. Like, we don't want to be transfixed because we're not chasing and treating symptoms, but the symptoms is still important. Your symptoms are still telling us something. And if we look at your symptoms and or your signs, right? Symptoms and signs are a little bit different. A symptom is you're complaining about something, right? I'm tired. I got a headache and stuff. Yeah. A sign might be, hey, did you know you got a rash in the back of your arm? That's a sign, right?
I see.
But
so before we get too far off this, what do you think about this comment? People don't know how to test for blood pressure correctly and how you do it. Do you think there's a problem in how we're testing for blood pressure in the country right now?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's a tool, right? Your blood pressure is a tool. But you walk into a doctor's office, your primary doctor, for a once-a-year checkup. They check your blood pressure at 3:00 in the afternoon. After you've been working, you had to leave work, rush over there in traffic, and the guy walks in his big white clinic jacket, and you're worried he's going to find something wrong with you. He takes your blood pressure, and it's elevated. Like, no kidding. Right? That's inappropriate. And it is, your blood pressure is too high, and they're putting you on a blood pressure medication. Right? But, see, your blood pressure goes up and down all day. And again, that's regulated by your brain. Right? Yeah. But, if you and I had to run across the street, Dave, and had to catch the bus, and we checked our blood pressure, it would be elevated. That would be appropriate. But if we're sitting here having a nice conversation, we checked our blood pressure and it's elevated, that would be inappropriate. So it's unfortunate if you go to a doctor's office, you get a one-time reading at any time of the day, you can't assess that. That's no meaning. What I tell people to do is this, and this is even people that I see who are on blood pressure medication. Okay, because I want them. It's even more important if you're on blood pressure medication. What I have them do is in the morning when they wake up, they get their own blood pressure cuff. You can get a reasonably good blood pressure cuff at any kind of a CVS or Walgreens or Rite Aid, whatever the local pharmacy kind of place is. You can get a good one for $50. And what you do is in the morning when you wake up, before you eat breakfast, before you have, if you drink juice or coffee, nothing. Just you can have a glass of water, but just sit down in a comfortable place, right? Put your arm on a table so your arm is relatively at the heart level. Put the cuff on your left arm. Make sure it's positioned correctly. Make sure it's above your elbow. Make sure that the tube is down the center crease of your arm, and have your arm in a resting on the table. Hit the button, take the reading. It goes up, and you get the reading, and you get a top number and you get a bottom number. Your top is your systolic pressure, the bottom is your diastolic pressure. Right. So just for the audience, the top number systolic is when your heart pumps and beats and squeezes and pushes blood out. The bottom number diastolic is in between your heartbeat. That's when your heart is relaxing, but that's when the blood is pushing through your arteries. So if your arteries are really tight, the pressure goes up, the bottom number goes up, the diastolic will go up. That's more of an indication of hardening of the arteries. But I say you take the reading, you write the top and bottom number down, and then you wait 2 minutes. You take a second reading, and you write the top and the bottom number down, and you wait 2 minutes, and you take a third reading. Take 3 readings in a row, and then you average those 3 readings. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's your Monday morning reading, and you do that every day for 1 week. You take it in the morning every day. Take 3 readings on Monday, 3 readings on Tuesday, 3 readings, and you average those things up, and then you average the 7 days, and that's your average blood pressure in the morning. So let's say you're checking your blood pressure, and let's say hypothetically your blood pressure is averaging, rounding out to 120/80. Okay, but some reason on Thursday you did it, and your blood pressure was 138 or 140/90. If the only day you checked it was on Thursday, you'd be freaked out thinking that you have high blood pressure. But when I look at it, like, well, no, your blood pressure is really averaging 120/80, even though you had 1 day. So now my question is like, okay, what might have occurred to cause that to go up on that Thursday? That's a little bit of a discovery process. Right.
This is such an...
And the person says, oh, I was kind of up late. I had some friends over. I was eating some crap food. I had indigestion all night. And I got up. I didn't sleep well. My blood pressure was like, oh, okay. No concern. Yeah. You don't have high blood pressure. Yeah. You just, your timing of eating was off and you ate the wrong thing. Right.
It's such an interesting discussion.
It's just like weight, Dave, right? It's just like weight, Dave. So, if you're going to weigh yourself, right, you want to weigh yourself the same time of the day on the same scale. Uh-huh. If you're going to check your blood pressure, don't check your blood pressure at different times. Check your blood pressure, as I'm saying to you, and use the same cuff. Because cuffs can vary a little bit. So if you're switching cuffs, there are going to be variations. So use the same cuff, because the scale could be up a little bit, but if you're using the same scale. So what you're trying to notice is patterns. So with your weight, what's the pattern showing you? That's why, when people want to lose weight and run the scale every single day, they're setting themselves up for failure. Don't do it that way. All right? Just do the right things, because your weights, can your background as a certified nutritionist and stuff. People do weight loss programs, but there's a lot of factors here that you can lose weight, slow it down. You can actually even gain weight before you lose the weight. You can gain muscle, which weighs more than fat, and then people get frustrated because they don't see the scale going down. But maybe their body fat's actually reducing, but you don't see it on the scale. So it's different ways you have to analyze things. So I hope I answered that question.
And it is a good question, and it's actually true for many areas of health. For example, a buddy of mine, a little older than me, recently contacted me because he had his yearly checkup and his testosterone was low. And that was my first reaction is, what time did you go in and have that tested? And I said, look, before you freak out, go back on an empty stomach first thing in the morning and have another testosterone test before you decide where it's really at. And he thought that was odd advice. And I'm no expert. I'm not. I just knew that one testosterone test could be very low depending just on the time of day that it was taken or if the stress was high, right? So it's the same with resting heart rate, same thing.
So the body works in circadian rhythms. Right. And circadian rhythms are not just day, night, wake, sleep cycles. That's the obvious circadian rhythm, right? But your hormones work in circadian rhythms, neurochemicals work in circadian rhythm, your brain works in circadian rhythms. And the new research shows us that your gut, the bacteria, the microbiome of your gut works in a circadian rhythm.
Interesting.
Right? So if we're eating consistently at different times of the day after day after day, right, is that disrupts your microbiome versus if you're eating at the same times of the day every single day, including the weekends. Many people,
Right.
many people, their weekends are different, right? Many people, they want to sleep in the weekends and they eat differently in the week and stuff. So they complete. They don't realize that they're constantly they're shifting in a negative way their circadian rhythms, which is changing the gut microbiome, which can have an influence on their hormones and on their moods and stuff. So the more we can stay to circadian rhythms, the better the brain works, the better the gut works, and all kinds of different things. But the testosterone is kind of that's a more difficult question because, I don't know, did he go back and get it retested and did it go up?
He did, and it did.
It did. To normal level?
It was higher. It was higher by 100 points the second test.
Oh, that's significant. Yeah, see, okay, that was significant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be an analysis. Like, so if you're working with somebody and you're trying to actually analyze the hormones in that regard, if a person has low hormones, then if you're going back to your blood test, you probably should do it like you're doing the blood pressure and like you're doing the weights. You probably want to get your blood tested the same time of the day if you're doing a reanalysis, right? So you can get that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I've kept you quite a long time, but there's a couple more important things I want to draw out of you. Obviously, I think people listening have figured out that if they want to improve their health, they can just contact you and you can help them with it directly. That's wonderful and obvious. And we'll have people, we'll have you give out your contact info here in just a minute. But there's going to be thousands of people listen to this and not all of them are going to become a customer, right?
Sure.
So for those people, that want to talk to you directly, we'll give you your information in a second. For everyone else listening who's here to get a few health tips, you've been doing this a long time. You've had a lot of people do a lot of tests.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the top things you've learned that you wish if people would just apply these few basics might make, give them a pretty good bang for their buck? Maybe things that you see consistently that people are just doing wrong, that if they just change these few things, it would really make a big difference.
I would say a few things. Is number one, the most common thing that I see with people is their blood sugar dysregulation. Meaning, this is a whole subject into itself, but I'll make this part as simple as I can. Right? Blood sugar, which is called glucose, is like gasoline for the car's engine. It's fuel. Your cells take it in for fuel. Right? So if the blood sugar is too high, which we call insulin resistance, is not good. It's not getting inside your cell. The flip side is if your blood sugar is too low. It's like your car is running on empty. You have no gas to operate. So you don't want high blood sugar and you don't want low blood sugar. Either one of those scenarios, because you're not getting glucose inside your cell, is a physiological stress response. So it's going to kick in stress responses and stress hormones, which then has collateral effects. So here's an easy go-to I tell people, without even running a blood test, is you pay attention to how you feel after you eat a meal. The question is, how do you feel after you eat a meal? Do you feel tired after you eat a meal? Does it change your mood? Do you feel like you have better energy? Can you focus more? Right? The answer really should be that after I eat a meal, it doesn't change how I feel or my energy any which way, shape, or form.
Interesting.
If you feel tired after you eat a meal, that is an indication of insulin resistance. That's an indication that the carb load was too heavy and you can't process those carbs and you're dumping them into triglycerides, which is no good. The flip side is if you feel better after you say, oh gosh, I feel like I'm less irritable, I can focus better. That's a clear sign of low blood sugar called hypoglycemia, right? But either scenario, if that's taking place, you're pumping out stress hormones, specifically cortisol, and cortisol has collateral effects on your hormones and doing different things. So that's number one is pay attention to your blood sugar. And I'm just giving you how you can do that. Two is, with food and with diet, this is old cliche stuff, but, if you want to get healthy, you just got to start eating healthy. And what does that really mean, right? If you just start getting back to real food, you don't need to make it really that complex, right? If you just start avoiding, we see people with autoimmune disease and we get into the gluten thing and food sensitivities and eggs and dairy, all kinds of, but if you just start focusing on healthy foods and staying away from processed foods. Small example, right? Because marketing, is such a big thing. And, a lot of people want to go gluten-free. Okay, fine, great. Then you should go gluten-free. Many people should. I have to go gluten-free. I have genes for it. But they substitute something else in place. And there's a lot of marketing for gluten-free. So, for example, people buy these chicken sausages. right? Which I was thinking, no, you buy the
Okay.
chicken sausages, right? Well, it's not pork sausages. It's got to be a healthy. It's chicken's healthy. It's got to be a healthy alternative to pork sausage. Isn't that great? Great.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll turn
Yeah.
the package over and look at the nutritional profile. It's shocking because what you're going to see in there is look at the sodium content. You're going to see that the sodium content is averaging like 400 to 500 milligrams per link. Because let's say per link, right? So
Per link.
there's like 4 links in a little small package, which you can gobble down in a second. So you're like eating about 2,000 milligrams of sodium.
Yeah.
Now, so sodium drives your immune system. Sodium is pro-inflammatory. It's not that it just causes high blood pressure. Yeah, it's going to pull more water into your vascular system and swell it, cause more high blood pressure. But more importantly, is that it ignites your immune system and it turns on an immune response against things. So if your immune system is already dealing with autoimmune problems and other stuff, the sodium is igniting that problem. If you got brain fog and stuff, which are basically immune driven, okay, the sodium is going to drive more brain fog and more stuff. So the blood sugar is an issue. Pay attention to your sodium content, right? And then you get into the 2 other things we're talking about, which is, sleep. There's so much research coming out about sleep. And that's easier to say, right? It's very hard for people to do. But, this class today is not for me to get into all the how and how not to sleep and improve sleep. There's a lot of strategies for that. But if you're not sleeping well, then that has to be high on your priority list of finding ways to help you to get adequate sleep. And it's not necessarily the 8 hours that everybody reports. Everybody's uniquely different. But but we clearly know that 4 hours is not sufficient, right? So we need adequate sleeps. And everybody's circadian rhythm is different too. So you got to work with your circadian rhythms. But sleep is really, really important. I mean, I can't even go into how important that is from your immune system and stuff. And the last thing is exercise, right? So you got your blood sugar issues. You got to watch your your processed food and your sodium. You got to watch your sleep circadian rhythms, and you got to focus on exercise. I know. Now, and you don't have to make that a whole big thing too. I get it. People with kids and things, your time is limited, but it's more about consistency with exercise than the intensity. So if you can even give me 10 minutes to 20 minutes a day, every day, it's going to go a lot farther than just getting out in the weekend and trying to crank out 2 hours in the gym, and that's the end of it. It's that one day. Yeah, you got it. It's everyday consistency. And there's your circadian rhythms too. So that's like your foundational framework, basically.
Okay, that was awesome and a nice bow. But before we give out your information and how people can contact you directly, I'm not letting you off the hook on my earlier question. I'm 54 years old, and I focus on my biological age. I really want to know, what do you think is realistic? Like, I get that. Yeah, I mean, there's people in Silicon Valley, right, that are working on living to be 200 years old. There's a whole bunch of people out there studying genes and health and all this stuff. And there's some crazy science going on. There's drugs going on, which I'm very leery of. But regardless, what is the upside, do you think? If a person really lives healthy, eats whole foods, exercises well, what should we be shooting for? 10 years, 15 years difference between our biological and physical? What do you think is the potential there?
Well, that's a loaded question because
yeah, it is.
We all want to hear, you can certainly go back to 20 years. There are some things out there where you can see when they do testing on vascular age. I've seen studies where some people have reduced their vascular age by like 8 years inside of a year. Wow. Yeah. Now, that's impressive. Yeah, it's impressive. But see, here's the caveat. The caveat is that still is genetics. So genetics plays a role here. And when I mean by genetics is epigenetics. So epigenetics is referring to how, like, the old dogma that your genes are fixated and that your genes are your destiny, that's already been tossed out the window. Right? We know that your genes is a carrier of information, but your genes is interplaying with your lifestyle and your environment and all kinds of different things, right? Right. So there's a lot that we can do. Here's a crazy example, right? You always see something extreme. Always know people that are some people that they smoke a carton of cigarettes, 2 packs a day. They drink a pint of whiskey every night, and they live to 100. Yeah. I mean, they're out there. It's good genes. They're out there. So genetically, the they have good genes in their detoxification pathways. They're able to detox chemicals out of their body maybe faster than somebody else can.
Yeah.
So if my genes can't detox as well as somebody else's, and I'm exposed to the same environment, I'm just going to have more toxic load in my body. Right?
Right.
So
right.
my genes have an effect. So even if we try to do the same exact thing to reverse the age, my genes are still a factor there. There are some genes that allow your body to be more pro-inflammatory than somebody else's. So we have to understand that, to answer that question, that genes are a factor here too. Right? So if I have time to talk to you, so if you look at, so in the genetic world, what we're really talking about in genetics, because we run genetic tests in the office. I run them on people, right? I may not run it right in the beginning, but at some point down the road, if the person's with me long enough and we want to think that's a viable piece of information to help them see them, we can want to start running some genetic tests. Like if you wanted to really reverse your age a little bit, you'd want some of that information. You'd want to know what your genes are, right?
Yeah.
And then you would make your diet even more target specific for your genes.
Genes.
Yeah, you'd make your nutritional recommendations much more specific for your genetic makeup.
I did the 23andMe test.
Yeah, so okay, that's a good
how
so the thing about here's the thing about these tests, okay? And I looked at hundreds of them. 23andMe was like the first guy on the block that started to bring genetic testing to the public. This is all after the Human Genome Project. The Human Genome Project was from 1990 to 2003. They were going to map out the human genes. And at the end of the day, right, they scratched their head and they said, geez, we got to rewrite the medical textbooks. Right? Because they knew going into the project that the human body is made up of like 1 million proteins. So then, therefore, there has to be 1 million genes to direct the production of 1 million proteins. We just got to map them out. And at the end of the day, they only find about 25,000 genes. They're like, how could there only be 25,000 genes, but we got 1 million proteins? What's going on here? And this is what epigenetics is. So we know that the influence of so many different factors, from diet and lifestyle and sleep and food and where do you live on the East Coast, the West Coast, all these different things, and stress levels, they turn on, turn off different aspects of your genes to exemplify different things. So this is then where personalized medicine comes in. So your genes interacting with environmental factors and nutraceuticals exemplifies what is called a phenotypic expression. So let me give you an example. I'll give you an example of this. Just an example that makes sense for a lot of people. If you run like hormones, and we look at pathways for hormones, right? In your adrenal glands, both in men and women. This is how men make estrogens and how women make testosterone. It's being produced by the adrenal glands. So you start with progesterone, and progesterone is going to make testosterone in men and in women. There's an enzyme that does that. So if you run a genetic test and it shows that there is a SNP, they call it, or a polymorphism, which is like a mutation variation of that enzyme, depending on how strong or weak it is, it can either speed that enzyme up or slow it down, which means in English, in some people's case, their progesterone may convert into estrogen very, very quickly and have a higher pool of estrogen, testosterone, and somebody else has a lower pool of testosterone. That's step one. The testosterone is going to get converted into estrogens. So if there's a SNP in that enzyme, okay, one woman may convert her testosterone into estrogens really slowly. So if she converts the progesterone into testosterone quickly, but she converts the testosterone into estrogen slowly, and she doesn't detoxify the testosterone quickly, then that woman phenotypically is going to be more testosterone dominant, and she's going to have a more lean, athletic body and be more striated. Okay. If you take another woman who maybe she converts their progesterone to testosterone slower, and her mutations converts her testosterone to estrogen more quickly, her pool of estrogen is going to be higher epigenetically. So phenotypically, she's not going to be as striated. She's going to be more bosomy, more fleshy. Those two women can have the exact same diet. They can be doing this exact same exercise with the same exact intensity and have two phenotypically different responses.
Right.
One girl just always looks striated, and no matter how hard that other girl works, she's not going to look like that person because their genetics doesn't influence that.
So basically, we're all trying to do the best we can with the genetics we've got.
So what you do with the genetics, when you start using epigenetic testing, it's a really cool insight about how to more personalize what your goals are. And so if you're saying to me, how can I best reverse my age? If I'm 54, I want to go to 50. I want to go to 45, maybe younger. How do I get to that place? That's cool. There are measurements, we look at cardiovascular health. So yeah, you do exercise and lifestyle. So the lifestyle that you lead, which is a healthy lifestyle itself, is going to promote that and slow down the progression. So you don't want to be aging ahead of yourself. So at least you can be where you're at, right? But you can also tether this a lot more when you bring in genetics and then personalize it even more specifically. Like you might be wasting your energy on certain supplements and not getting the benefit you want out of that for your needs if you're looking at your genetic potential, right?
Right.
If I see that my epigenetics shows me a lot of weaknesses in my detoxification pathways, right, and I don't do that real well, that could impact my estrogen levels, and I might have a higher pool of estrogen. And no matter what I'm doing nutritionally and stuff, I can't get my estrogen levels down. So it might behoove me, as an example, to put a lot more emphasis and support my detoxification pathways so I can clear these hormones and put me into a better hormone balance.
Okay, people. So those of you listening, if you want this personalized medicine from Dr. Pucci, how do they talk to you? How do they reach out and find out how this could work for them?
Yeah, I think a great place to start because, like you said earlier, not everybody wants to be one-on-one and stuff like that. So I think the best thing we're creating a lot of online courses and stuff too. But right now, today, they can go to my website, which is getwell-now.com, GETWELL- or hyphen, that is NOW.com, getwell-.com. And when you go there, you can get access to a free course, which takes a little bit of a deeper dive into functional medicine. That's very informative, and just kind of get a sense of this and see where it's like. And you can go, it's full of a lot more information. You can dig a little bit deeper on my website. So there's a lot of good information there. If anybody's interested in even having a consultation with me, we offer a free discovery call. We set aside about 20 minutes. It's complimentary, just to kind of see where a person's at, what their health issues are, and if what we do is something that we feel that we can help them with, or at least give them some direction where they can even begin and start. So there's a lot of different ways that they can, contact us and get some assistance. And so it can be one-on-one if they like it, or it can be just getting some information. Cool, right?
Very cool. And this has been a great episode. Obviously, you are very knowledgeable on the subject. You got a lot of great answers and a lot of good information. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been really a pleasure to talk to you about this.
Yeah, I'm glad I was here too. Thanks so much for having me, Dave.
Thank you. And for those of you listening, this is Dave Sherwin wishing you health and success.